The death penalty looms like a dark shadow over many lives around the world. It's hard to believe that 55 countries still carry out this harsh punishment, and the experiences of those on death row can be terrifyingly different from one place to another. Imagine the chilling reality in Saudi Arabia, where executions happen in public, or the mental anguish in Japan, where prisoners wait in fear and uncertainty. Join me as we delve into the grim and haunting lives of those facing death in various corners of the globe. What does death row really look like around the world? But wait, before we dive fully into this, take 2 seconds and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on our future amazing content. And hit the like button. 1. United States, a complex system. In the United States, the death penalty is not just a legal punishment. It's a topic that evokes deep emotions and heated debates. Each year, around 20 people find themselves facing the grim prospect of death, with states split over the morality and effectiveness of capital punishment. While many states have abolished it, 11 states still actively carry out executions, reflecting a complex tapestry of beliefs about justice and retribution. The most common reasons for receiving a death sentence include homicide and serious drug offenses, often driven by societal fears and the desire for safety. Once someone is sentenced to death, their life takes a harrowing turn. Imagine being confined in a cramped cell, the walls closing in as you come to terms with your fate. The days stretch endlessly, filled with silence and isolation, a stark contrast to the life you once knew. 24 hours before the execution, the inmate is moved to a chilling place known as the death house. Here, they undergo a rigorous full-body search, stripped of any semblance of dignity. They change into a stark white outfit, a uniform that symbolizes their impending fate. This is where they will spend their final hours in a cell ominously named the Death Watch Cell, designed for contemplation, but often serving as a prison for thoughts of despair. As night descends, that final evening can feel like an eternity. Some inmates find solace in sleep, while others are tormented by the shadows of their past and the specter of their future. Memories flood their minds, loved ones, dreams, and moments of joy now lost to them. As the clock ticks down, the reality of their situation becomes unbearable. The hours are punctuated by a blurred routine, breakfast served on a cold metal tray, phone calls to family filled with awkward silences and muffled tears, visits from a priest or spiritual advisor, whose presence offers a flicker of hope in an otherwise dark time. At the 6-hour mark, inmates are given a unique opportunity to choose their last meal, yet this is also a bittersweet moment. They are limited to a $30 budget, forcing them to make agonizing decisions about what they would like to savor one last time. Should it be a favorite dish from childhood or a simple comfort food? Each bite holds the weight of finality. When the moment of execution finally arrives, it's a heavy and solemn affair. Guards escort the inmate down a sterile corridor, the atmosphere thick with tension. They enter a room where witnesses, often family members of the victims, gather to observe this final act of justice. The curtains draw back, unveiling the stark reality of what's about to happen. An act that can only be described as a tragic culmination of life, choices, and consequences. The inmate is granted a final opportunity to voice their thoughts, perhaps a heartfelt apology or a declaration of innocence. And then, depending on the method of execution, lethal injection, electric chair, or another means, life slips away in a matter of minutes. The silence that follows is deafening, filled with the weight of loss and a multitude of unanswered questions. 2. Saudi Arabia, a brutal reality. In stark contrast, Saudi Arabia's approach to the death penalty is both severe and unforgiving. With an average of 185 executions each year, the kingdom operates under a strict interpretation of Islamic law, where even minor offenses can lead to a death sentence. Imagine living in a society where a simple act of theft or a change of faith could cost you your life. The fear of execution looms large, creating an atmosphere of dread that permeates everyday life. The methods of execution in Saudi Arabia are grim and brutal, including beheading, firing squads, and stoning, all of which serve as public spectacles. Picture this: the clamor of the crowd, the tension in the air as people gather to witness a punishment meant to deter crime, but often leaves a chilling imprint on the collective psyche of society. The swift nature of these executions leaves little room for reflection, with the condemned often facing their end with only moments to comprehend what's about to happen. For those awaiting execution in Saudi Arabia, the conditions are harrowing. Inmates live in isolated cells, often stripped of basic human rights. The physical and psychological torture they endure can be unimaginable. Many are subjected to solitary confinement, a punishment that chips away at their sanity, leaving them grappling with despair and fear. The threat of a public execution adds to the psychological torment. The idea of facing death before a crowd, of being reduced to a mere spectacle, is enough to instill a deep sense of horror. When the time finally comes, the execution is executed swiftly, with little opportunity for the condemned to prepare themselves mentally or emotionally. Imagine standing in the stark reality of that moment, knowing that life is slipping away and that there is no escape. The finality of the act serves as a chilling reminder of the precarious nature of justice, and for many, it's a desperate end to a life filled with struggles and regrets. 3. Japan. The psychological game. Japan's approach to the death penalty is unique and deeply unsettling, making it the only democratic nation that still practices capital punishment. Despite executing only 5 individuals annually, the psychological toll on inmates is profound. Imagine living your life in a small windowless cell where every day blends into the next. The walls are stark, the air is heavy, and time seems to stretch endlessly. You wake up every morning not knowing if it's just another ordinary day or your last. The reality of this uncertainty is a tormenting nightmare. Inmates are informed of their execution just 1 or 2 hours beforehand, a cruel twist that can lead to extreme anxiety and despair. Picture the fear and chaos in their minds as they grapple with the thought of impending death. It's a psychological game where the stakes are life and death, and the rules are never clear. This lack of information can lead to severe mental health issues. Many inmates experience heightened levels of stress, depression, and even insanity as they wait for an unknown fate. On death row, strict rules govern every aspect of their lives. Inmates are expected to keep their heads down, remain silent unless spoken to, and comply with rigid daily routines. They work long hours in harsh conditions, often performing menial labor that serves to remind them of their confinement. The oppressive atmosphere within the prison walls amplifies their sense of hopelessness. It becomes a cycle of despair, where each moment feels like an eternity, and the prospect of freedom fades further into the distance. Many inmates report feeling isolated from the outside world. Visits from family are rare and brief, leaving them with only the haunting memories of their past lives. The weight of their isolation and the harshness of prison life can lead to feelings of abandonment and deep emotional pain. With every passing day, their hopes of redemption diminish, and the darkness of their circumstances settles in, creating an environment where mental anguish thrives. In Japan, the death penalty is not just a punishment. It's a psychological torment that strips away the humanity of those condemned. As they confront the reality of their situation, many grapple with existential questions about their lives, their choices, and the meaning of justice. The unsettling nature of this system raises important ethical concerns about the morality of such a punishment in a country that prides itself on being democratic and civilized. 4. China. A hidden crisis. China, holding the title for the most executions globally, presents a stark and troubling picture of the death penalty. With an estimated average of over 1,000 executions each year, the country's practices are often shrouded in secrecy. The death penalty can be imposed for a wide array of offenses, ranging from serious crimes like murder to political dissent, highlighting a legal system that leaves little room for mercy. The chilling reality is that no one is safe from the long arm of the law. Wealthy individuals and political figures alike have found themselves facing capital punishment. Inmates in China endure grueling conditions while awaiting their execution. Picture a crowded prison where inmates are packed into small cells, forced to live in unsanitary conditions that compromise their physical and mental health. The air is thick with despair as they face harsh treatment from guards and limited access to basic necessities. Many are subjected to forced labor, often working long hours in factories under strict supervision. This constant state of exploitation compounds their suffering and strips them of their dignity. The waiting period for execution is a harrowing experience. Inmates often live with the knowledge that their lives could be snuffed out at any moment, a reality that breeds anxiety and hopelessness. Many are executed without warning, creating a profound sense of shock and sorrow for their families. Imagine a loved one suddenly taken from you, with little explanation or understanding of why. This abruptness adds to the grief of those left behind, as families grapple with the loss of their loved ones amidst a system that lacks transparency. The unpredictability of the judicial process in China raises ethical concerns about human rights and the rule of law. Trials can be swift and unfair, with many defendants lacking proper legal representation or facing coerced confessions. This systemic issue leaves countless individuals vulnerable to wrongful convictions and harsh penalties. Additionally, the societal impact of such a punitive system is profound. The fear of execution serves as a deterrent, but it also creates an environment where silence and obedience are prized over justice and reform. People may live in fear of speaking out against the government or reporting injustices, knowing that dissent could lead to severe consequences. The hidden crisis of the death penalty in China reveals a troubling reality, one that raises critical questions about justice, morality, and the treatment of human beings within a legal framework. As the world watches, the stories of those condemned to death serve as stark reminders of the urgent need for reform and a revaluation of what justice truly means. 5. Somalia. Public executions. Somalia has earned a grim reputation for its public executions, a practice that instills fear across the nation. Each year, an average of 13 individuals face the ultimate punishment, often carried out in front of large crowds. This brutal spectacle is not just a form of punishment, it serves as a chilling warning to others. Imagine being part of a crowd, witnessing a hanging, a shooting, or even stoning. Such scenes become etched in the minds of onlookers, reinforcing the harsh reality that crime carries severe consequences. These public executions often take place in central squares or other prominent locations, drawing a mixture of curiosity, horror, and sometimes a grim sense of entertainment from the crowd. Families of victims may attend, witnessing what they believe is justice served, while the condemned faces their end surrounded by jeers and sometimes cheers. The atmosphere is heavy with tension as the community collectively grapples with the brutal reality of life and death. While awaiting execution, inmates endure horrendous conditions. Prisons in Somalia are notorious for being overcrowded and unsanitary. Cells are filled beyond capacity, with inmates often forced to sleep on the floor, surrounded by filth and decay. Basic necessities like food and water are scarce, and medical care is virtually non-existent. In such a toxic environment, the mental toll on these individuals can be devastating. Many are consumed by fear, despair, and hopelessness, wondering how their lives reached such a tragic end. The public nature of these executions creates a pervasive atmosphere of fear and compliance in society. People are constantly reminded of the potential repercussions of their actions, leading to a culture of silence and submission. Open dissent or criticism of the government or clan leaders can quickly lead to fatal consequences. As a result, many citizens choose to remain quiet, suppressing their thoughts and feelings about injustice and brutality in their communities. This cycle of fear further complicates Somalia's ongoing struggles with lawlessness and instability. Instead of fostering a sense of justice and safety, these executions often perpetuate a climate of terror, hindering any possibility for societal healing and reconciliation. Oh wait, I know you like this video already. Go ahead right now and show me some love by hitting the like button. Done. Let's continue. 6. Belarus. Europe's last holdout. Belarus stands out as the only country in Europe that still actively employs the death penalty, a practice that speaks volumes about the state of human rights within its borders. In this authoritarian regime, individuals can be sentenced to death for various crimes, including treason, sabotage, and even serious economic offenses. The gravity of such charges can lead to executions that occur with little warning or transparency. Inmates in Belarusian prisons live under harsh conditions as they await their fate. The atmosphere is suffocating, both physically and psychologically. Many prisoners are confined to small dark cells that lack adequate ventilation or light, further compounding their sense of isolation and despair. The psychological distress faced by these individuals can be profound, as they grapple with the uncertainty of their future and the looming specter of execution. The secrecy surrounding the execution process in Belarus only adds to the anguish felt by inmates and their families. Executions are often carried out in clandestine circumstances, with little to no information shared with the public. Families are frequently left in the dark, unsure of what has happened to their loved ones. The lack of closure can be agonizing, as they live with unanswered questions and unfulfilled hopes. This secrecy extends beyond the execution itself. Details about the judicial process are also murky, leaving families to wonder whether their loved ones received a fair trial or even the chance to defend themselves. The culture of fear in Belarus is pervasive, with citizens aware that expressing dissent or criticism of the government can have dire consequences. The specter of the death penalty looms large, discouraging open dialogue and creating a climate of intimidation. Many Belarusians feel compelled to stifle their voices, knowing that speaking out against the regime could lead them down a similar path as those condemned to death. In a country that should be striving for progress and reform, the continued use of capital punishment and the secrecy surrounding it hinder any chance for justice and accountability. Instead, they reinforce a cycle of oppression and despair that leaves a lasting impact on society, casting a shadow over the potential for healing and growth. 7. Indonesia. The consequences of narcotics. Indonesia has become notorious for its strict drug laws and the severe penalties associated with drug offenses. The country has a zero-tolerance policy toward narcotics, viewing drug-related crimes as a significant threat to society. This stance was thrust into the global spotlight in 2005 when 9 Australians, known as the Bali Nine, were caught attempting to smuggle heroin from Indonesia to Australia. 2 of the members, Myron Sukumaran and Andrew Chan, faced the death penalty, igniting widespread outrage both in Australia and around the world. Despite international appeals for clemency, Sukumaran and Chan were executed by firing squad in April 2015, a decision that divided public opinion. While some believed in the need for strong anti-drug measures, others argued that the death penalty is inhumane and ineffective in combating drug trafficking. This tragic event underscored Indonesia's unwavering commitment to its harsh drug laws and highlighted the ethical dilemmas surrounding capital punishment. Living on death row in Indonesia is a harrowing experience. Inmates face constant anxiety, knowing that they could be executed at any moment. The psychological toll of awaiting death can be unbearable, with many experiencing severe mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. The prison environment is often brutal, characterized by overcrowding, violence, and inadequate medical care. Inmates live in small, unsanitary cells with little access to proper food or health care, exacerbating their fear and hopelessness. Moreover, the legal process can be confusing and disheartening for those facing the death penalty. Inmates often struggle to understand their rights and the legal system, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation. Many cannot afford proper legal representation, which can lead to unfair trials and increased sentences. The weight of uncertainty hangs heavy as they navigate the complex maze of legal proceedings, appealing for their lives while grappling with the ever-present threat of execution. 8. The impact of public sentiment. The public perception of drug offenders in Indonesia further complicates the situation. The government often capitalizes on nationalistic sentiments, portraying itself as a defender of society against the drug epidemic. This has led to a culture of fear surrounding drug offenses, where the public largely supports harsh penalties, including the death penalty. As a result, the media frequently sensationalizes drug-related crimes, adding to the stigma faced by those on death row. The case of the Bali Nine, for instance, became a symbol of Indonesia's tough stance on drugs, leading to heightened awareness and debates around drug trafficking and capital punishment. However, it also raises questions about the effectiveness of the death penalty as a deterrent. Despite the severe consequences, drug abuse and trafficking remain significant issues, prompting many to argue for a more rehabilitative approach rather than punitive measures. 9. India. Overcrowded prisons and harsh sentences. India's approach to capital punishment reflects its complex legal and social landscape. The death penalty can be imposed for a range of serious offenses, including murder, terrorism, and gang-related violence. In 2023 alone, an estimated 120 death sentences were handed down, signaling a troubling trend for those who find themselves on death row. Prisons in India are often overcrowded and under-resourced, with conditions that can be described as dire. Many facilities were built decades ago and are ill-equipped to handle the current inmate population. As a result, inmates frequently find themselves crammed into cells with little room to move, facing unsanitary conditions that pose health risks. The lack of access to proper sanitation, food, and healthcare can lead to physical and mental deterioration, making the experience of incarceration even more harrowing. For inmates awaiting execution, the situation can be especially grim. The lengthy legal process means they may spend years on death row, caught in a cycle of uncertainty. During this time, they often lose contact with their families, leading to feelings of isolation and despair. Limited visitation rights and the burden of navigating a complicated legal system create a sense of hopelessness that can be psychologically damaging. The emotional toll on inmates is profound. Many grapple with fear of the unknown as they await their fate, unsure of when or if they will face execution. The prolonged uncertainty can lead to severe mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. The isolation from loved ones adds another layer of pain, as inmates may feel abandoned and forgotten. The legal maze. The Indian legal system is notorious for its delays and complexities. Inmates on death row often experience protracted appeals, and the process can be fraught with legal challenges. This state of limbo can create a psychological burden, as inmates wait for final decisions on their fates. The overwhelming stress of this prolonged uncertainty can exacerbate feelings of hopelessness and despair. Moreover, the judicial process can be influenced by socio-political factors. Cases that attract media attention or public outrage may lead to rushed trials and harsher sentences, leaving inmates with little chance to defend themselves adequately. This systemic issue highlights the vulnerabilities within the legal framework, where those on death row may not always receive the fair trial they deserve. In India, the death penalty remains a contentious issue, with ongoing debates surrounding its morality and effectiveness. Advocates for reform argue that the focus should shift toward rehabilitation rather than retribution. As society grapples with the complexities of crime and punishment, the experiences of those on death row serve as a poignant reminder of the need for compassion and understanding within the justice system. 10. North Korea. A life in fear. In the shadowy realm of North Korea, the death penalty is a tool of terror, often wielded against political prisoners. Each year, it is estimated that around 300 executions occur, primarily targeting those perceived as threats to the ruling regime. Political dissenters, human rights activists, and even ordinary citizens who dare to express discontent face the ultimate punishment. Imagine living in a society where a whispered criticism could cost you your life. These executions are shrouded in secrecy, taking place behind closed doors away from the public eye. Families are left in despair, unaware of their loved ones' fates. The government rarely communicates with the families of those executed, leaving them to grapple with uncertainty and anguish. This pervasive silence amplifies the trauma, as loved ones can only wonder whether their family members are alive or dead, trapped in a nightmare they can hardly comprehend. The conditions in North Korean prisons are grim. Inmates often endure harsh labor in camps where they are subjected to backbreaking work and brutal treatment. These facilities are overcrowded, and the basic rights of prisoners are disregarded. Many inmates suffer from malnutrition and inadequate medical care, leading to a slow deterioration of both physical and mental health. The fear of execution looms large in everyday life. The oppressive atmosphere discourages any form of dissent, pushing people to conform to the regime's demands. Citizens live under constant surveillance, afraid to voice their opinions or challenge the status quo. This culture of fear forces many to suppress their true feelings, resulting in a society where silence reigns supreme. Imagine the weight of such a reality, where even the simplest act of speaking out can lead to dire consequences. The anxiety and hopelessness felt by the people create a breeding ground for despair, as they navigate a world where safety and freedom are mere illusions. 11. Iran. Minor crimes, major consequences. Iran has earned a notorious reputation for its stringent application of the death penalty, with over 500 executions recorded in 2023 alone. In a country where laws are often harsh and arbitrary, people can face execution for a range of offenses, including drug trafficking, theft, and even political dissent. The justice system here is unforgiving. A mere accusation can lead to severe consequences, trapping individuals in a web of fear and uncertainty. Among the most shocking aspects of Iran's death penalty is its application to children and minors. Reports indicate that individuals as young as 15 can be sentenced to death, a practice that horrifies human rights advocates worldwide. The thought of children facing such an irreversible fate is a chilling reminder of the vulnerabilities within the system. These young individuals often lack the maturity to understand the full weight of their actions, yet they are treated as adults in the eyes of the law. Inmates on death row in Iran endure brutal treatment. The conditions are dire, with many kept in solitary confinement, where the crushing isolation can lead to severe psychological distress. In these cold, dark cells, they are often subjected to torture, both physical and mental, as authorities attempt to extract confessions or information. This inhumane treatment strips away their dignity, leaving them broken and desperate for relief. When executions occur, they are often public, serving as a grim spectacle for the community. Families and bystanders gather to witness the brutal final moments of a life cut short. This display is not just a form of punishment for the individual but a message to society. Defy the law, and you will face the ultimate consequence. The public nature of these events instills fear within the populace, discouraging dissent and reinforcing the regime's power. People become hesitant to speak out or challenge the government, understanding that even minor offenses can lead to dire outcomes. In a society where lives are so easily extinguished, the atmosphere of fear permeates daily life. In conclusion, the realities of death row across the globe paint a chilling picture of the human experience, highlighting the vulnerabilities within legal systems and the often devastating consequences of punishment. For those condemned, it's not just a sentence. It's a journey filled with fear, despair, and the haunting uncertainty of their final moments. In North Korea, the pervasive atmosphere of fear leaves citizens silenced and desperate, while in Iran, the arbitrary application of the death penalty reveals a system that prioritizes control over compassion. While some countries may offer a glimpse of hope for reform, others remain trapped in cycles of violence and punishment, where human lives are undervalued and dignity is stripped away. These stories remind us of the urgent need for compassion and understanding, as we confront the complexities of justice and the human condition. The global conversation surrounding the death penalty must continue, fostering awareness and encouraging change to create a world where all lives are cherished and protected, free from the shadow of fear. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about international affairs and cultural dynamics, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to World Culture Diaries. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.